Hello everyone, this is Mitch and welcome to another Avorion video, which I am recording strictly with my new microphone, so I'm still trying things out, but hopefully this is going to sound amazing, or at least very much better than what it used to. So today in Avorion, I wanted to tackle the topic of building new ships. So how do you build ships and manage to get something that looks better than a box of cereals or a board cube or anything like that? So here we go. First step, I would highly recommend turning off Steam Friends to begin with. Boom. There we go. So I would highly recommend turning off the Steam notifications for recording, but anyways, so the first step would be to have a sketch. Make sure you have an idea and at least in enough details that you know kind of where you're going, and you think it's gonna look good, at least on paper already you can start to picture it. So either you take it exactly like I said, you put it on paper, good old pen and paper, or you could go on Paint or whatever program you like and sketch. You can also of course go on Google Images and find something to inspire you, but make sure you have a plan, because I can guarantee that if you just kind of improvise, it's never, well, maybe it'll look good, but chances are you'll spend a lot of time, and a lot more time than you would than if you had a plan to build a really good looking ship from scratch, from just your imagination. Not saying it's impossible, but I wouldn't recommend it. Next thing I'm going to recommend is to build in creative, because building a new ship from scratch, if you want it to look good, it's going to take some time, and if you're not in creative, you're going to be fighting Exodan, pirate invasions, whatever. Hopefully the system you're in, can protect you from those, but it's not perfect, so you want to do it in creative as much as possible. My next piece of advice is to build from the core. So if we take the example I have here, my plan is that there's going to be like two big pieces in front here, and this is the core of the ship. So if you look, I've only got a few basic things regarding the shape, but I've placed down a lot of blocks that I want to be basically that way for the future. For example, I placed the hyperspace module, I placed the cargo, I placed the batteries, and I'm pretty sure I placed the generator as well already. The shield generator too were placed. There are a few engines, but I wouldn't recommend starting with those, because I'm pretty sure I put them there as placeholders for now to see how it would look. But basically you want to build everything else before the engines, because engines performance is reliant on the mass of your ship, which is going to constantly change as you build, which means that you cannot rely on the numbers you're going to get, and you also cannot rely on the numbers you're going to get because the requirements in engineers is going to increase, which is going to affect the performance of your engines and thrusters and such. So it's very difficult to predict if you build them beforehand. Now I do have some thrusters and engines on here, mostly because I wanted to buy crew. I needed to move this big piece of unfinished ship just to get some crew, because I couldn't see the stats I would get, plus the warnings are annoying and so on. So I put some, but these are definitely not final. So building from the core, and building what from the core? Well, everything except thrusters and engines, basically, especially thrusters. And that is because clicking through the no, I don't want to do that. Go away. Go away, tutorial. Yes. Okay, so yeah, everything but thrusters, and that's because thrusters work basically using leverage. So you're going to want to put your generators, your hyperspace modules, your computer modules, your crew modules, whatever else you can think of, basically cargo bays, solar arrays, anything basically except movement, because you want to build those things around the big massive pieces you've planned out, so that the space that you're gonna be left with to fill the basic shape that you planned, you want that space that's around the edges to go for thrusters because of leverage. Basically, if I take this block and I put it there, it's going to produce less yaw, and you can see the values changing over here in yaw and pitch and so on. The closer it is to the center of mass, which we can see here, the little red, blue, and green lines, the further away it is from that, the more it's going to produce in terms of yaw, pitch, and roll. So there we go. So as you can see over there, it's... And you might think that's not significant, but that's actually, you know, like from 0.03 to 0.05 is almost twice as much. And that's for this very, very massive piece of whatever at this point. I mean, it's not finished. So you want to keep the space around the edges hollow for you know, before the final steps, basically before you put all the hull, the armor plating, or the hull, or you know, whatever is going to be on the outside. You want to hold on for the end. And also, as much as possible, you should use directional thrusters. For example, the space I have that's directly left and right from the center of mass is going to be the best space to put either yaw or roll. If I put it like that, forwards and backwards, it's going to be great for yaw. If I rotate it to face up and down, relative to the ship obviously, it's going to be great for roll. And that's about it. If I put it like that, facing towards the center of mass, look, there's no yaw, no pitch, no roll at all. All this is going to give me, if I put this block, is lateral thrust. Lateral thrust meaning I could strafe left to right faster if I do this, but I'm not gaining any roll, yaw, or pitch. But you still gain the lateral thrust if you don't put it in line. For example, if I put it in front here, now it's going to produce yaw, and it's going to produce lateral thrust, and it's going to produce more yaw there, facing left and right, than if, for example, I put it like right on top of the center of mass. Like right here, it doesn't produce any. So for yaw, you want to put it either at the front or the back, facing sideways, or on the sides, facing front and back. So rotate like this to maximize yaw. To maximize pitch, you can go front and back, facing up or down, or you can put it on top or at the bottom, facing front and back. For example, this is going to produce a lot of pitch. You can see it on the left, on the right, sorry. And then for roll, the best locations are either on the side, facing up or down, as you can see, or on the top, facing left or right. And that's it. So that's how you maximize yaw, pitch, and roll, basically. And that's how you get the best performance out of a ship, by putting most of the massive but quote-unquote useless blocks around the middle, and putting the thrusters around the edges. So that's it for this tip. And then you want to use, for the scaling and the grid size, you want to use a scale that is twice as big as the grid size. So for example, this would work, because when you scale blocks, you're not adding that step in one direction, you're adding it in one axis, which means that it's going to add basically half that step on one end of the block and half on the other hand. So if you have a grid size that's half, then you're gonna have an easier time aligning blocks. If you use the same, well, every other scale step is going to be off. You're going to be unable to line it up properly. And that brings me directly to the next tip, which is to avoid grid sizes, scale steps that finish in 0.05. So basically, this is bad, because how do you divide that in half to use for your grid? You can't, because that would be 0.0025, and you simply can't go into such small measures. So you could go realistically, at least for the core of your ship, you don't want to go lower than 0.1, and you want to avoid 0.15, but 0.2 is good, and 0.25 is bad, but 0.30 is alright. That's basically it, because you can go with 0.05 measures for details at the end, but if you build your core out of those, you're pretty much guaranteed at some point that something's not going to line up. That's pretty much it. It's just not going to line up. So for example, this is acceptable. You have a grid size that's half this, and it's not by 0.05, so you can still divide it to go smaller, or you can multiply it, fine, and go bigger, and it's gonna work. It's gonna work fine. Then another thing is to use all the tools at your disposal. Like, seriously, I sometimes see posts on the forums about snapping issues and not being able to line up blocks properly. Well, there's a good chance you actually can. If you're having issues, you can snap to block middle. That's very quote unquote easy. And then you can even go with match block, and boom, you've got something that's very precise. And if you use measures, like I said, block middle is actually a very useful option. Match block, less so in general, but still it can be useful. Randomized mode, well, whatever. Selecting blocks, for example, if you have many blocks and you wish to merge them into a single block, well, you could use that to, for example, merge all those thrusters together as one. Well, now that's a problem because I've got a lot of small blocks behind, but it could work. You could make it work. Transform block tool, very, very useful if you want to upgrade a ship to another thing. However, for example, if I wanted to copy this and make it entirely out of Avorion, for example, I can select the whole thing, go Control C, I copy exactly like you do in Windows or whatever, and then you can go Template Material, and I could go Organite, for example, and I could press Control V, and that doesn't work. What if I reselect it? There we go. It's gonna suggest Ogonite and Xanion, because some blocks cannot be made out of Ogonite, so it's still gonna suggest Xanion, but every block that can be made out of Ogonite, it's gonna do it. Just like that, I could copy paste this whole bit and convert everything that's not possible. That's possible in Ogonite to Ogonite, even though I don't have to click every block individually. Basically, that's the big deal. What else? Well, you can do this with template material, with anything you're pasting. Basically, it could be shapes. By the way, save shapes, please. I don't use it nearly enough, but for example, these little things here around the edges, I actually saved it because I don't want to have to, copy paste every time, find it on another ship, for example, or whatever. And well, it's just convenient. How do you do that? Well, you select whatever shape you want, and again, drawing a frame. It's probably going to select something else. No, it didn't. You go Control C again. Now kind of awkward. You hold space and you press Control V, and boom, I've got another copy. Now be careful, because if you press delete, bam, it's gone. And oops, I deleted the other one, but I think it's fine. Yeah, you have to select it. You can't just mouse over, you have to select it and then you press delete, and it's gonna remove the shape. And then you can Control V and paste the shape again if you want, or a different shape. Merge selected blocks. So as I said, I could merge all these thrusters if I wanted to. Undo and redo, very useful. Focus. For example, you're working on a piece of the ship and you want to focus on a different block, very useful. You can also move the mirror to selection. So I could move the mirror line there. So even if you're making a ship that's not symmetrical, you can put a mirror line and work on a smaller piece that's symmetrical. And by the way, please do use the mirror mode for anything that's symmetrical, because it's basically saving you, half the time it would take. You only have to place one block for every 2 blocks that's going to be placed. So please do use mirror mode. It's also very useful because if you're trying to make something and you're using a lot of different block sizes and something doesn't line up in mirror mode, well, it's a sign that you probably misclicked something or whatever, and it's not proper. So it can show you when something's wrong. The snapping, again, I don't recommend using no snap, but local grid and block middle are both very useful options. And that's basically it. Like, seriously, use all your tools. Don't be afraid also to save part of ships, like when you're building, if you want to revert to a specific step. Also, I tend to save large blocks of crew quarters, because when I'm building a new ship, I can just erase most of the stuff, or actually I can just apply the plan to a large crew block and keep my crew, so I don't have to constantly buy more. And yeah, is there anything else that's really useful? Well, practice. I mean, probably your first ships are not going to look very good, but you're going to learn a few tricks along the way when you try. And if you apply all these tips, I can guarantee your ships should look a lot better than if you didn't. And that's it. So if that helped you, if you found that interesting, if you've enjoyed, please leave a like, subscribe, and thank you for watching. Bye bye.